having been over in Iraq and deployed to a war, knowing that if something were to happen to me or to any of my fellow soldiers over there, that they won't be left there, that they'll always come home.
When you're young and you're involved in operations, you're invincible. You don't think about things like that, even when they happen to friends.
You know, we've got a war going on now, and we've got people that are, you know, dying now, and those families need to know that the government does care.
In some cases, it's not going to happen until 20 years later, 30 years later, 45 years later, and it's a keeping of the promise that the government makes to its service members who volunteer to give the ultimate sacrifice.
When you enlist in the military, you recognize one day you might be put in harm's way. You understand some will fall on the battlefield, while others will endure captivity in enemy hands. To all of us in uniform, America makes a solemn pledge: no one left behind. But there are still more than 88,000 service members listed as missing in action. In this Recon, we look at the ongoing efforts to fulfill that pledge, to bring them all back home, from the conflicts of today to the wars of our parents and grandparents.
It was one of the most beautiful things I've always heard of Arlington funerals, but it was beautiful. It gave a certain amount of comfort that there was that much value given to my brother. He would have been a statistic, and now he's rated this honor.
38 years to the day after they were killed near Khe Sanh, Vietnam, the remains of 3 Marines and a Navy medical corpsman received full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. The 4 were part of Breaker Patrol, a 7-man team scouting for North Vietnamese Army infiltration routes into South Vietnam. The night of May 10, 1967, 30 to 50 North Vietnamese stumbled onto them. A fierce firefight broke out. An attempt was made to rescue the patrol by helicopter.
However, due to the heavy volume of enemy fire, they were unable to set down and had to leave and return to Khe Sanh. During this attempt, one of the pilots was killed and several crew members were shot up pretty badly.
The firefight had already killed 4 members of Breaker Patrol. Second Lieutenant Heinz Allmeyer, on only his 2nd day in country, Platoon Sergeant James Tice, Lance Corporal Samuel Sharp, and Petty Officer Malcolm Mac Miller, the patrol medic. By daylight, more rescue attempts were made as fixed-wing aircraft dropped napalm on the Vietnamese.
Due to the close proximity of the enemy and the heavy volume of fire and the fire started by the napalm, it was virtually impossible to retrieve all the bodies of the patrol members. Only the 3 wounded men were able to get out.
They did the map of Khe Sanh and where they were.
Sandy Kahili followed Mac Miller's footsteps into the medical field and became a nurse herself. She'll never forget the day she learned of her younger brother's death.
When I got home from my job, I worked a 3 to 11 shift. My husband also, he worked at Lockheed, and when he opened the door, I knew something was wrong. And he just looked at me and he said, "Mac," and I collapsed. I have to say, it's to this date the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. There's a hole that will never be filled.
So I'd like to find some reports on 2nd ID.
Today I was focusing in on the 2nd Infantry Division from the beginning of the war through the end of 1950.
The possibility of closure that recovery can bring may be withheld for years. It can take decades to find those who go missing in action, or known casualties whose bodies aren't recovered. The search often begins in military record archives, where service members' last known locations may be documented. Unit records for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam are stored here in massive climate-controlled rooms at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. Sergeant First Class Andrew Wahovia, a researcher for the Defense Prisoner and Missing Personnel Office, comes here to pore through Korean war maps and morning reports.
I take it, my job very seriously in that if I were the family members that were receiving this report that I'm creating, I would hope that who had ever prepared it had went to the fullest lengths and means that they could to give you the most accurate data and information. And so you draw a personal relationship with the names and those soldiers' cases that you work on, and it's very humbling.
Herb Bartolo, a Vietnam vet with 23 years in the Army, is also touched by the work.
When you talk to family members, they break down. It really gets me, as you can tell. And it touches me every day. It's just like, I guess, most veterans. The day doesn't go by when you don't think about it some way, whichever war you were in.
The work of finding and putting together snippets of information to form a cohesive picture of a service member's last moments before they went missing is a daunting task. That work is coordinated here at the Defense Prisoner and Missing Personnel Office in Arlington, Virginia, and often takes the effort of many people over many years.
They are archivists, linguists. They speak to the families. They speak to fellow service members who may have actually been there when the member went missing, or may have been there when we have evidence of their last known position, if you will. And they gather all the clues and they put the puzzle together.
Solving the mystery of a loved one's whereabouts is where all of this organization's energies are directed. But the underlying reason for its existence is a matter of keeping faith with those who serve.
This is an incredible mission. There is no other nation in the world that has a dedicated effort and a dedicated capability to bring their missing service members home.
The Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command, JPAC for short, is another of those resources. JPAC's Central Identification Laboratory in Honolulu is a state-of-the-art forensics facility that's also accredited to do police investigations. Dickie Heights, a Vietnam veteran and special assistant to the commander, compares the mission to detective work. He works on developing leads that may end with recovery of remains.
These wounds in these families' hearts are fresh. They're not 25 and 35 and 40-year-old wounds. They're like they're today. And when they talk about their loved ones, if it's a brother, for example, it's like they saw him yesterday in their mind's eye, and they think about him every day, and they want to know, what's being done to try to find him. People in this business are used to saying that it's like doing a crossword puzzle, putting a crossword puzzle together, except you don't have the picture on the front of the box.
Up next, we'll hear from team members who set out to solve that puzzle and bring the missing all back home.